A year ago now, in June of 2023, the Black Clover movie launched with both critical and financial success. But instead of just enjoying the film and appreciating Black Clover greatness, people have taken to the internet message boards and started verbal wars implicating that Black Clover, Sword of the Wizard King, is not canon. As someone who has been very involved as a defender of this film's canonicity, I have not found a single compelling argument that this movie is not canon. I don't even think this is close. The worst piece of evidence for the Black Clover movie being canon is better than the best piece of evidence that supports that it is not canon. What it really all boils down to is a war of misinformation. But I don't think that anyone who believes the movie not to be canon can be blamed. While it is true that there's not a statement out there that it just directly says the movie is canon, and there are a bunch of anime movies out there that are not canon to the manga, but what I want to do today is go over the various sources and prove that the Black Clover movie is in fact canon to the manga, as well as debunk many of the common arguments that people put up to argue that it's not. So first off, what is canon? I think this is one of the biggest issues, that there's a confusion around the term. Canon, how it should be used, just means a part of the same story. That means if we say that the Sword of the Wizard King is canon, that means that when you would read the Black Clover manga after this film, you would read it with the understanding that the exact events of the film took place between chapters 228 and 229. If you don't think it is canon, then you view the film as just not happening. Basically, it's determining whether or not these characters post 228 actually experienced the events that were shown in the film. Now that we're using this definition as the term for canon, let's move forward. Probably the biggest source of misinformation regarding the film's canonicity is Netflix themselves. This article has made the rounds and it says that the movie is not canon. And Netflix released the Black Clover movie, so that means that we must take their word, right? Right? No, we're not falling for this anymore, guys. This was just a headline to spawn clicks and promote the movie. And if you actually read it, it's more so a non-answer rather than giving anything definitively. Not only is there glaring errors in the article, which discredits any actual claims made, but there is no source referenced for why they came to their conclusions. Before we get to the answer, I want to show you those errors. The subheading of the article says that Asta is fighting to become the ruler of the Clover Kingdom as the Wizard King. Most fans know that the Wizard King is not actually the ruler of the Clover Kingdom. They are the protector, the military leader. The king of the Clover Kingdom is the actual ruler. This error is mentioned again in a section of the article where it refers to the Wizard King as a ruler, meaning this was not a typo. The writer of the article genuinely believes that the Wizard King is just a king. Okay, now let's get into the claim. The question is asked whether or not the movie is canon, and this is the answer in the article. No, while Black Clover, Sword of the Wizard King, takes place in the world of Black Clover, the film is standalone. The story takes place after season 4 of the series, but any future seasons won't necessarily incorporate events from the film. Before tackling the veracity of their canon claim, another major error. The article states the movie takes place after season 4. This is objectively incorrect. The movie takes place in the middle of season 4, between chapters 228 and 229 of the manga, or episodes 157 and 158 of the anime. If we are to take this article at their word, we'd expect to see Devil Arm Asta in the film, and Yami trapped away in the Tree of Cliff-Off. This is a major reason why people think the movie's non-canon, because of this article saying it takes place after season 4 and not in the middle of it. Several official statements say that the film takes place during the 6 months of training with the Heart Kingdom. So again, objectively wrong. Now let's analyze the actual statement. The author of the article states that the film is not canon, but then also states that any future seasons won't necessarily incorporate events from the film. It's just a non-answer. Won't necessarily? Also, the author of this article does not provide any source as to what they are saying to back it up. When you pair the lack of a source and a non-answer with that they think the movie takes place after season 4, even though it takes place in the early part of season 4, as well as them thinking that the Wizard King is the ruler and not the military general, we can actually just throw away this article and say that it has absolutely zero validity in the discussion of determining whether or not the movie is canon. Tadum is a website that is owned by Netflix that is just used to promote the material on their site. This person shows no authority on Black Clover and sources nothing. Also, Netflix only had the rights to stream Black Clover. They have no authority or rights determining what is or what is not canon. I don't care if this lady just outright said that the movie is not canon, even though when you read it, it's actually a non-answer. But it wouldn't matter anyways because it's an article by Netflix who doesn't own anything about Black Clover just the rights to stream it. Now let's talk about some of the official statements about the Black Clover movie to determine whether or not it might be canon. Let me nip it right in the butt. The idea that Tabata was not involved with this movie is pure garbage misinformation. I don't know how anybody could think this, unless if they are speaking on the movie without even watching it, because Tabata is credited as the chief supervisor of the film, as well as the designer of characters. You literally just have to watch the movie to know that the creator of the manga was involved with the project. In this interview here, the creators of the movie actually talk about they went back and forth with Tabata to design the characters, which means that he actually was involved in the film to a pretty significant degree. But then again, most people agree, or at least know, that Tabata is a part of the process of making this film, but that wouldn't inherently make it canon, just because he's involved. In Tabata's first interviews about the film, he talks about how this was a why didn't you do it in the original manga type of story, which, when paired with his other statements, it becomes a lot more clear on what the intent of the statement is. In Black Clover Volume 23.5, which is a mixture of a data book and a light novel that coincides with the Sword of the Wizard King film, there's a series of questions with Tabata himself. He is questioned about what type of input he had on the setting of the film. He states that the scriptwriters wanted the movie to take place in the Land of the Sun, but Tabata vetoed that idea because he was going to be doing that in the manga, so they had to change the film to be set within the Clover Kingdom. Here's the thing. If the movie was not canon, then why not just do the movie in the Land of the Sun? And the manga can still go a different route with Asta's first appearance in the Land of the Sun. The fact that Tabata had to veto this idea to keep the Land of the Sun arc intact just shows that the movie is in fact canon, because otherwise he wouldn't need to change it. Because yeah, it would not make sense for Asta to already appear in the Land of the Sun in the movie, and then wash ashore in the Land of the Sun in the manga, and be shocked and surprised about everything about it. Another piece of information that enhances the idea of the movie being canon is Volume 23.5 itself. For those of you who don't know, it is the Black Clover volumes that are essentially the primary canon of the series, as weekly chapter releases often have art or dialogue errors that are then fixed for the official volume releases. An example of this is the weekly chapter that says that Zenon can only use 70% of his devil power, but then it's fixed in the volume where it's 80%. And you can clearly see the changes in the art that is unfinished from the weekly chapters. Black Clover Volume 16.5 is the series' first data book, which would then mean the Volume 23.5 would be canon because it is a listed volume within the same conventional style of the first data book. This does multiple things, not only making the movie canon, but it confirms the timeline. Volume 23.5 takes place obviously between volumes 23 and 24, which is chapters 228 and 229, signifying that this movie does in fact take place somewhere in the massive time skip between the Elf and Spade sagas. Also, did you know that Princia was actually shown in the anime? In episode 2, when it shows a bunch of past Wizard Kings, a character who looks exactly like Princia is shown. You can't even make the excuse that this is not canon because it's in the anime only, because this episode is also referenced in the anime canon episodes that were supervised by Tabata and his editor. If these scenes were shown in episodes that are canon to the manga, that means Tabata supervised them and approved them to be canon, which makes sense why this character would then appear in the movie. Not only that, but Princia's whole story arc and her theme with Merluna is essentially capped out in the latest chapter of the Black Clover manga. As in the movie, it shows that Princia always fought alone because she could make her own armies, and that led to her downfall. But Merluna had people around her, and that's what pushed her forward, and this was climaxed in her fight with Morris when she used ultimate magic in the latest chapter. Another piece of evidence for the movie being canon that goes overlooked is the idea of the Gargantuan combo spell. This is a brand new type of magic that the movie would have introduced first, before the manga, had the movie not been delayed. Because what happened in the manga is Dorothy's Gargantuan combo spell to summon Asta was technically shown before the movie by only a few days, but that's only because the movie was delayed by 3 months. And we actually see the Gargantuan combo spell being referenced in the movie's trailer well before the release. So if the movie was introducing brand new types of magic that were later confirmed to be real types of magic in the manga, that only adds to its canonicity. So as I said, we know the movie takes place before chapter 229 or episode 158, but there's been a lot of debate on when exactly this takes place within that timeline. In volume 23.5, it ends with a short story where a lot of people interpret that the movie takes place exactly halfway through the 6-month heart training time skip, as it is stated by Luck that Asta had gotten a lot stronger in the past 3 months. But if you look at the full context of this novel and the story at large, this would be an incorrect interpretation in my opinion. So we do know that the episodes in the middle of the heart training are canon. They were supervised by Tabata, and many of the events in these episodes shown up in the manga later, like Mukasa being revealed in the anime canon, but then shown in the manga, as well as becoming a vice captain and getting his magic stone back. Within these episodes, it actually states that by episode 157, they've been training with the Heart Kingdom for 3 months because their training was halfway over, which would then suggest that Asta went from this to this in a matter of days if we were taking the 3 months interpretation. But if we actually pair up these two statements and look at the context, shortly after the statement is made, Asta leaves his training with Luck to continue training with Gaja, which would then mean that Asta trained with Gaja for 3 months without Luck. This puts the timeline of the movie just days before the Spade Saga starting, which makes sense as to why the majority of the characters now have their Spade outfits, like Asta, Noelle, and Mirliona. And it does make a lot more sense because Asta has really good control of his anti-magic in the film, basically identical to his level of power that he shows in episode 158 or chapter 229, way better than the control he showed in 157. Also, are we to believe that Asta got this buff in just a few days? So yeah, the movie takes place just days before the Spade Saga. But speaking of the anime canon episodes, it is pretty heavily referenced in the movie itself, which would imply that the movie is canon. Because if the movie is canon to the anime canon, and the anime canon is canon to the manga, it makes a 3-way chain that makes them all canon to each other. A few of the things in the anime canon that appear in the movie is this guy here. He became a teacher at the Hajj school. That's an anime canon episode only thing, but then it's referenced in the movie. Also, in the anime canon, Sekre joins the Magic Research Division, which is further shown in the movie. Now, regardless of the connections or statements in the movie that should make it canon, people still claim that there are just blatant contradictions or inconsistencies that would make the movie not canon. And if I'm being honest here, I've not found a single thing that is actually an inconsistency, but rather somebody's misunderstanding of an aspect of the Black Clover lore. First claim I want to address is the idea that the manga has not yet referenced the movie directly, meaning that the movie is not canon. Which you can argue can be a compelling argument, because if you look at things like the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie, that movie was referenced 2 months after the movie was released. On the surface level, that can be a good argument, but when you think about it, it's actually not. We've only had 10 Black Clover chapters released since the movie came out, which means that Tabata has had barely an opportunity to include events or characters from the movie into the manga to harden its candidacy of being canon. Not only that, but he is literally in the middle of an arc. If we look at Dragon Ball Super Broly, it was really easy to dedicate a page to the Broly movie because it was transitioning from one arc to the next after the Tournament of Power. Going back and reading the Judgment Day arc, I don't think there is any spot in these previous 8 to 10 chapters that would have been good to include a reference to the movie. It wouldn't feel natural. But I do think there will be a reference to the movie in this arc, as I believe that Lucius will bring back past Wizard Kings and make them paladins, and I believe Conrad will be one of them. But we have to give Tabata time. He's only had 10 chapters since the movie came out to reference it. People try and backtrack and say, well, we've really had 150 plus chapters since the movie came out, if we're going by the canon timeline. But how is he going to reference things that just didn't even exist yet in his mind? Besides, I don't think the movie even needs to be referenced in the manga for it to be canon. That's not how canon works. If we look at the scope of the story, is it really that important to reference this movie? Because days after the events of the movie, way more important and crazy things happen anyways, in the war against the Spade Kingdom. And that was the primary focus all along. Other weird claims that people argue is that the light novel for the movie is not written by Tabata, therefore it's not canon, which is a weird argument, and it's actually a self-defeater, because Johnny Onda, the author of the Sword of the Wizard King novelization, as well as the short story, is the author of 3 other Black Clover light novels, and all of them are canon, as they are included in the data book as part of the series. Some of the light novels have been adapted into anime episodes, and in chapter in-betweens in the volumes, they're just outright stated to be canon by giving newspaper clippings summarizations of the books so that we understand what happened in those stories of the light novel. So people are saying that the light novel is written by Johnny Onda. By their own logic, that would have to make it canon because all of Johnny Onda's other light novels ended up being canon. One of the most often brought up quote-unquote inconsistency is Asta has a devil arm in the movie. People point out that Asta doesn't get the devil arm until he gets his devil bargain with Libe while fighting Dante, which takes place after the film. I understand the confusion, but if you actually look at Asta's arms at the end of the movie, both of them are back to normal. That means that Asta only went through a similar type of contract where he temporarily gave his arm to Libe, and even in the film, Libe says he'll take the rest later, which is actually just setting up and adding foreshadowing for Asta losing the rest of his arm. So it's actually not an inconsistency whatsoever, because Asta does not keep the devil arm. Another thing that people bring up is the idea that Asta used magic in the movie. He wielded the Imperial Sword and used the magic and paired that with his anti-magic to defeat Conrad. People will see the idea of magic and anti-magic working together as a plot hole, which is actually hilarious considering that now one of the most controversial chapters and moments in Black Clover history has to do with Asta giving his anti-magic power to his fellow Black Bulls, the anti-magic and the magic entangling together to form a pseudo-anti-magic where they can use anti-magic empowered magic. Now, it's also been shown well before the Spade Saga that anti-magic and magic can work together or coexist when it's needed. Asta has control over the anti-magic. He can choose when and when it does not nullify magic. So nope, Asta using magic and anti-magic at the same time is absolutely not a plot hole or an inconsistency. So this cannot be used to argue the movie not being canon. Another common argument people argue that the movie is not canon is Conrad's old brigade called the White Serpent. People argue that because the Magic Brigade is not included in the manga, that would mean that it's a plot hole and therefore the movie is not canon. But I very much disagree with this because the movie set it up for why we never hear about the White Serpent. It's a part of Conrad's downfall. The White Serpent were wiped out, Conrad being the only survivor as their captain, and then after that, he would become the Wizard King. Even by the beginning of the film, which is 10 years before the event of the Spade Saga, that would mean the White Serpent had been extinct for 10 years or more, since we don't know exactly how long it took for Conrad to become the Wizard King after his squad was wiped out. So with Conrad being sealed away by Julius, there would be 0 members left from the White Serpent, which makes sense why we never see the White Serpent in the manga, because they were wiped out. Because even by the beginning of Black Clover, they would have been extinct for 8 years at the time, and likely would have been skewered by misinformation in the years following, since their murders were at the hands of the royalists who hated that squad. Another thing that people bring up is Kaiser. They say that's a plot hole that he is shown as a captain in the movie, when it should be Gildre. One of the things that people say is a massive plot hole was the Black Bull's Vice Captain Noct appearing in the film and lending power to Asta. They say he hasn't met Asta at this point, so how is he giving him his power? Well, it's actually shown pretty clearly in the movie that what is happening is that Finral is spawning spatial portals all across the kingdom so that people can give their power to the sword. So there's no reason to assume that he saw or felt the craziness that was going on in the Clover Kingdom, teleported over, and then gave his magic. Also, Julius says that the sword will guide them, meaning that the sword could be seeking out magic channels to absorb, and Finral was just following those magic channels to make portals in those directions to help the sword absorb said magic. So again, it's not a plot hole. This is probably the best complaint, but if you actually analyze it, it doesn't actually mean that much. The final point I think I want to bring up is people saying that the movie was not canon because Asta is not seen as this massive hero for stopping an evil Wizard King from destroying the kingdom. But there's a lot of issues with this complaint. Because for one, in the Black Clover manga, Asta has saved the kingdom multiple times and is never rewarded for it. In fact, it's the opposite. Asta saved the kingdom, possibly the entire world, from Zagrid. Yet instead of being hailed as a hero, he was being tried for the one doing the crime itself. On top of that, Asta defeated an ancient demon in front of the entire kingdom. They all saw it. And then also defeated the king of devils, Lucifero. And yet it took 15 months just for his name to be cleared. So there's no actual reason to believe that he would be rewarded or hailed as a hero for stopping Conrad if the entire kingdom saw him defeat an ancient demon, and that didn't really do much for him anyways. So in conclusion, I've gone through and shown why the Black Clover movie is, in fact, canon. Not only is the Netflix article just objectively wrong, written by somebody whose knowledge on the series is questionable at best, but the creator of the series has officially stated that they couldn't do the movie in the Land of the Sun because that would not make sense with the way the manga was going. Also, the creator of Black Clover, Yuki Tabata, was heavily involved with the movie. There are a lot of connections with the movie to the anime canon, and the anime canon is canon to the manga. The guidebook and short story that is the sequel to the movie is listed as volume 23.5, which canonizes it as part of the primary Black Clover canon. Just because in the 10 chapters since the movie has released, we don't get any mention of past Wizard Kings or the movie, doesn't mean we won't. And even if we never get that, that does not mean the movie is not canon. There's no inconsistencies with the movie, and even if there is one that comes out, inconsistencies do not mean non-canon. There are inconsistencies within the manga But anyways, guys, the movie is canon. There's not really any good argument to say that it's not. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed, please do leave a like, comment, and subscribe. You can become a member to support the channel and get access to extra videos every week. With that being said, hope you guys all have an amazing day, and peace out.